guys. Welcome back. I feel like I've been gone for a while, but welcome back, everybody, to the Huntsman Hill Polanco podcast. And we are at episode 275, if Mike's math is correct. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to see your guys' faces. We have some catching up to do. And we have an episode that I think should hopefully be a little bit fun. Kind of a different topic that I thought about some time back, and yeah, we'll get to it. But before we do that, I just wanted to say hello to you guys and see what's been happening. How are you?
Well, yeah. Look, it was fun the first time, right? This is. I think we talked about it on a previous episode about how this became our lost episode, in that I fucked up. I still don't even know how, during the recording of our One Hit Wonders episode that we are now repeating. That was so much fun to have the first time. I will take you guys back to episode 110 of this podcast, when we talked about Peter Murphy's Love Hysteria, and then back to episode 202 of this podcast, when we again talked about Peter Murphy's Love Hysteria, forgetting that we had previously spoken about that record. I think that was the only other real snafu we've ever had in 275 episodes of this show.
That's pretty good.
Of just like brain farts or technical mishaps. So
we can't say that.
That's not so bad, but I've apologized to you guys profusely. I'm sorry we're having to talk about this again, but the first time, as we all agreed, was so much fun that we wanted to just do it again so that we could put it out there for people to listen to.
The human factor is alive and well in the Huntsman Hill Polanco podcast. You know what's funny though? I hosted that, obviously, like we're redoing that today. I thought, in the back of my critical mind, was it that bad that Mike actually purposely deleted?
I would never do that. I would never do that.
No, it was way too fun having you on the hook there, Glenn. We wouldn't have.
I know, right? So I cleaned up my act for this one. We're a little bit more in line.
No, look, I think some of that stuff I think you're referring to was kind of fun parts of the episode. We can talk about it as we go tonight. You know, back when we very first began the show, I would be pretty meticulous in my editing of like trying to cut out when somebody coughed, or I am notorious for saying and trying to cut those out, or trying to just tighten the thing as much as possible. I gave up doing that a long time ago. So now I pretty much, add the bumper music, cut out any big lengthy silences, but I only do a cursory edit now, which is pretty easy. So there's no way I'm going to go through a whole episode and delete. Nah, fuck it, man. This is
right.
We'll put up any conversation for posterity, and here we are again, trying to repeat what was hopefully we can recapture that magic.
All right, Rodney, how you been, buddy?
I've been great, man. Got to do a little bit of traveling. Got out to Santa Barbara, which is always nice, but not like you. You spent a fair chunk of time in Colombia. How was that?
Yeah, it was fun, man. It was kind of the second part of a trip that I needed to do to kind of wrap up some business with my dad's passing last year. So I was lucky enough to make it out there before he passed last year, and then I just needed to get back out and honestly see where he was buried, and I got to see the place he lived at and grab some pictures and stuff like that. And I took the family, so we honestly did about a week and a half, about that. And we did half of it in Bogota, which was great. We got to see all my family pretty much out there, which was really cool. My son got to meet them all. And then, in order to basically sell and make the trip fun for Nancy, we ended up going to some Colombian-owned islands out in the Caribbean that were actually about 2.5 hour flight away from Colombia itself proper, and got to just relax and see some great views of some beautiful ocean, and just got to just relax and go hang out at beaches and just trip out and, like enjoy life a little bit before the grind. Because as most of you guys know, my son's in hockey, and that will now start and continue for about 11 months, and it's the grind. So it was nice to get away and get him out of it for a little bit. But yeah, it was absolutely awesome. And yeah, it was the other part I would say too that was great about it was the Colombian national team was in Copa and we're doing really well, and we got to catch 2 games via television in like restaurants and bars and stuff like that. They don't care if kids are in bars there, but it was just amazing when they would win. Like everybody was in the streets and having fun and like cheering it on. And soccer's a pretty big sport outside the U.S., I think, but it's yeah, a little bit.
Maybe.
So.
I've heard that.
But yeah, that was fun, man. That was great. But unfortunately, they lost to a tough Argentinian team, but whatever.
Yeah,
But
very cool. And
yeah.
you told me you came back in the homemade submarine with the funding for our podcast, right?
You got the stuff, or
Yeah, right.
I mean, we went video.
Yeah,
We're on
we'll
video
talk
now.
about that later.
This ain't cheap, man. It's
yeah,
the real deal.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Those hosting fees.
Yeah, that was
That's awesome, man. That sounds killer.
Yeah, that was fun. It was fun.
Nice.
But here we are. We're back at it. So yeah, looking forward to this episode. I feel much more relieved that you didn't purposely delete the last episode that we recorded. So I was like, anyway.
Let me just say, man, we've known each other long enough and know each other well enough that if I did think it sucked, I would just tell you I thought it sucked and I'm not going to post it. I wouldn't pretend.
Right.
Our dear friend Patrick Sweeney, hello Patrick, he listens to these. So I won't be too specific about this, but he shared with me a piece of art from somebody in his family is working on yesterday, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to get your opinion on this." And I'm like, "I actually think it sucks, and here's why I think it sucks, and this is bad, and I would do this differently, and just my opinion." So, for better or for worse, it's
right.
Well, if you want to know, it's like, I'll tell you. So I would have told you, Glenn.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes, coming from the man who I think a few episodes ago said Rollins was the weak link in the Rollins band.
I stand by that. Good memory, Rodney. Oh, I have to tell you guys a quick story before we get into the meat of the episode, funny. Just because you guys, it's music related and you guys will appreciate it. So, as any regular listeners know, I'm a massive fan of the Afghan Wigs, and they just ended their U.S. tour in Los Angeles, and I have seen various incarnations of Greg Dooley projects, be it the Wigs or the Twilight Singers or the Gutter Twins or Dooley solo, like more than well over 150 times, everywhere in the United States, all across Europe. I've seen them kind of everywhere. So try to follow them around and as much as possible. And this tour, I didn't see them anywhere. The only place I was going to see them was in LA. And I was, I bought the tickets as soon as they went on sale. They were playing with the church. They toured with the church, and they're playing at the Ace Hotel, what used to be the Ace Hotel here in Los Angeles. And I got my tickets through the Ticketmaster queue process and whatever, and was sort of had like, I don't know, I think it was like 8th row or something, or 9th row. It's all seating at the Ace Hotel. There's no GA there.
Oh.
So there were good seats, but I'm like, I've spent so much money following them around, and this was I was going to go to this one show, and I'm like, I've got to just get better seats if this is the only show I'm going to. So I look on StubHub, and I think my seats were like row L or whatever. So I look on StubHub and I see row AA for sale, and I'm like, great, I'll just grab those. They're a little bit more expensive than mine, so I grabbed them. put my row L tickets on StubHub, sold them relatively quickly for a little bit better than face value. So I got my money back for those. So I just spent a little bit extra than maybe I would have, but got a row AA ticket. So super excited. So my wife and I went, had a great night, had dinner there beforehand. She's on crutches because she had this silly ladder accident. So they were being very kind to us. And when we walked in, the opening band was playing. This guy called Ed Hardcourt, who's really good, kind of British singer-songwriter guy. And really dark in the room. So we're walking down the aisle, and it's too dark to see any of the row letters. So, and it was not nearly full. There wasn't very many people there yet. So we're like, well, let's just sit down until
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, until we know where we're going. We'll let the opener end. And so we sit on these aisle seats. And as we're sitting there, kind of an usher walks by, and Chaley kind of grabs him and says, hey, can you tell me where these tickets are? And he's like, I'm brand new. What's the row AA? Okay, yeah, give me just a second. So he disappears. We're watching the show, and as we're sitting there, Chaley goes, I hope it doesn't go A through Z and then AA. And I'm like, no, it's like it's just like a Dodger Stadium. Like AA is the front. The way Dodger Stadium works is AA is the front row, and then it's like AA, BB, CC, A, B, C. So I'm like, no, he's the front row. So the usher comes back like 10 minutes later, and he's like, oh, you guys are way back there. He says, you can sit here until whoever comes to take these seats, but your seats are way in the back. So I'm livid. I'm like beside myself. And Chaley's like, just calm down and try to enjoy this and whatever. So I finally calm myself. And the short of the story is the people whoever seats those were that we sat in never showed up. So we were in those seats we appropriated through the whole evening. Never had to go back to my AA tickets that I paid more for than I should have. They're way in the back. But it is a lesson for all of you live music fans out there. If you don't know the venue very well, or if you think you do, make sure that you do, because you might be getting AA when you're getting like Z+. So I thought it was kind of a funny, ridiculous. Well, probably not worthy of that long of a story, but I thought it was fun.
That was good.
That was good. Also, if you're gonna do the fake crutches thing, you gotta capitalize on it way more.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and we have before. I've been with girlfriends and wives on crutches before and get the full red carpet treatment. So yeah, that it's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Yeah.
To get the ADA section and all that and whatever, but I digress. So anyway, ended up being a lovely evening. Glenn, as I said before we started recording, they had played the night before in Anaheim, and I'm so pissed that I didn't just go, because that would have been really fun to experience with you. And I just love them so much. It was so great, and I'm like, why didn't I do this again? But whatever, next time.
How was the church?
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask too, yeah.
So the church played after the Wigs. We watched a grand total of one song, and then we're like, you want to get out of here?
Oh.
And we just watched one song and left.
All right.
Yeah, they were good. That song was good, but it was like she was on her bad knee, and we had to get home to the dogs, and one of our dogs literally tried to eat through the front door during the 4th of July. So that's a whole non-music related story. So we were like, let's not leave the dogs alone too long tonight. So unfortunately, we missed the church.
Yeah, I feel like my life is kind of boring compared to the Huntsman household.
I know, right?
I wish it was as exciting as it sounds.
Wow. Well, glad Chaley's okay. Glad you got to sit in row A or close to A, even though you had AA tickets.
We're closer to A than we were AA, ultimately.
Right.
Although we're all probably closer to AA than we want to be.
Right, for sure. All right. Well, that was exciting. That's good to know. And I apologize for not somehow seeing the text, but I'm sure the Afghan Wigs will come around again.
God willing.
And frankly, and I've never really given them a fair shot. I am bummed that I missed the church, but one day we will experience this music together. Anyway,
make it happen. I remember very vividly one of the last times when I said, "Oh, they'll come around again," and then Kurt Cobain killed himself. So there's been plenty of bands that I missed that I thought would come back around again. So hopefully, not wishing any. Okay, this is getting dark. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. Okay, well, the topic of this episode is one-hit wonders. And as Mike alluded to, we did record this before and it got deleted, but here we are again. I will admit to myself that it was not my strongest, even though it was my topic last time. I maybe twisted the term one-hit wonder into what I wanted it to be kind of meant in my brain. So I, as we were going through last time and hearing your guys' picks and the reasoning and stuff like that, I kind of, redid it a little bit, not too much, but just cleaned it up a little bit. So I think what we did last time, I think last time, honestly, Mike, did you give a description or an explanation of what you thought was a one-hit wonder?
I think we should do that because I think you're right. I think what your topic last time was great. I think what we potentially lacked going into last time was an agreed upon definition about one-hit wonders means. And I think it's relatively intuitive, but I think the word that sometimes can trip you up is the word hit. What does hit mean? Does that mean Billboard chart? Does that mean X number of sold? Does that mean, the song that's familiar to a subculture of people that love that kind of music? You picked a Crumbsuckers song last time. I'm guessing we're not going to talk about the Crumbsuckers tonight. Hard to argue that they had a hit, but your point was, this is the one song that everybody identifies with the Crumbsuckers. Rod and I even actually sort of disagreed with you on that point, but that perspective I think was fair. I came up with when we originally decided to do this episode, and I think as we continue the conversation, we don't necessarily need to continue to reference last time, but I felt like I needed to set a certain criteria for myself, just because there are so many songs that I wanted to include or could have included. As I have mentioned in the past, I have a playlist that has 100 songs on it that are one-hit wonders, and I had to leave a bunch of songs off of it. In fact, when we recorded our last episode, you guys mentioned some songs that weren't on my playlist that I had to put onto my playlist. And since I have a strict 100 song limit, I had to find other songs to take off. So it's this work in progress. And I think about one-hit wonders kind of regularly as a result of this playlist. So had to give myself some criteria so that I could get to my 5, which was your kind of the criteria you set, Glenn, for what we're doing tonight. So the first thing was I could only pick one song per decade, because I think because of when we grew up, my opinion is that the 80s is kind of the definitive one-hit wonder decade, but I think my sisters, who largely grew up in the 70s, or when we grew up in the 70s too, but you, depending on how old you were during your really teen years, I think you might say that's the best time or the most obvious time for one-hit wonders. For me, it's the 80s. So I'm like, my whole list would be 80s songs if I didn't narrow it down. So I picked one from the 60s, one from the 70s, one from the 80s, one from the 90s, and then one from just the 2000s. Beyond that, I was very specific to not include any artists that had what could be defined as a second minor hit. So if you think about Frankie Goes to Hollywood, whose big hit was Relax, but Two Tribes, as an example, was also a hit single. Flock of Seagulls, you think of Iran, but Space Age Love Song was a big song for them. So I eliminated Simple Minds and those kinds of bands that had one big hit, but also had some other minor hits. Tried to exclude those. And then I also didn't include any artist whose catalog that I have either a deep affinity for, or I think have significant artistic merit. So Devo comes to example. Devo is absolutely a one-hit wonder. Whip It was their only hit. But Devo's catalog is so fucking great that I would never call Devo a one-hit wonder. Same thing with Sinead O'Connor and T-Rex. And, you know, there's a lot of those where they only had one song that ever charted, but if you dig into their catalogs, it's like they've got so much great material. I didn't include them. So that's sort of broadly speaking how I thought of it and I approached it. And that's how I was able to narrow this list down to just 5 songs.
Yeah. No, good. I appreciate you kind of going through that. I don't know if Rod, you use kind of the same criteria or not, or as strict of a criteria as Mike did. I didn't. And I think just to explain what I did last time, I was thinking more macro one-hit wonders, like, you know, huge songs that everybody in the universe would know. And then there are certain genres that I think there's, you know, like maybe say hardcore, which is why I picked, or even crossover, which are very small and narrow genres that maybe if you're intimate with it, you might think that this is a one-hit wonder. The Crumbsuckers was probably a bad pick, but I still stand by the fact that, you know, in those small genres and subsets of music, I think there are legitimate one-hit wonder bands, but I didn't pick any. Going forward, I kind of reassessed what I was doing and kind of flushed out that kind of idea. But yeah. So anyway, and the other thing I thought was cool that we did that you did, Mike, last time was that you were looking at just the numbers on what is it, downloads
Spotify.
or something on Spotify,
yeah,
or
listens.
something like that.
Yep.
Listens, yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool because it really shows like the discrepancy of like their first song and then maybe what their next biggest or charting song would be. Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Hopefully you can do that again this time.
For sure.
Rod, did you use any other? I mean, Mike was pretty comprehensive in what he was doing. Anything different than that?
Well, if you listen back to most of our list episodes, I generally am the one who says like I didn't have any criteria at all. I just sort of let it happen. If you would have asked me right around the time that you suggested this episode, I thought there was a decent chance that all of my 5 choices would have been from the 80s. Mike brings up a really good point about, and it transcends just music. It goes to everything culturally and everything in life, right? Like whenever someone grew up in their heyday, their pocket, they'll always argue that was the best. But not only do I think that the 80s had a disproportionate number of one-hit wonders, we touched on it. We actually touched on it a lot on the Lost episode. But the introduction of MTV. So I think you could make an argument of the 80s being a little more significant in the field of one-hit wonders because of that. It was this, you know, at the time, this revolutionary thing that not only, you know, just like Top 40 radio has always done, played certain songs ad nauseum, but there also weren't a ton of videos that existed in like 81 when that came out, right? So they only had a limited number of videos that they could actually play. Also, not only did they play certain songs over and over and over, but there were a lot of songs that the imagery of the videos captivated people. Just off the top of my head, like Jeopardy by the Greg Kihn Band. Not an exceptionally wonderful song, but a pretty cool, interesting video. And I personally watched that, I don't know, 100 times.
For sure.
And so I think the 80s should be looked at in terms of one-hit wonders differently, primarily because of MTV. Like that put a whole new lease on life for one-hit wonders, right?
You're 100% right.
Yeah,
you're 100% right.
It was a whole. It just for better or for worse, it completely shook up people's perception of music.
And you're right, and it sort of became people's jukebox, right? Where they weren't necessarily going to go buy the Great Kim Band's record, but so they would know that one song. And when you talk about the imagery of the video, like Aha, Wall of Voodoo, The Buggles, Modern English, like Thomas Dolby, like they immediately, like if you say Thomas Dolby to me, the first thing I see is the woman standing on the stepladder in the Blinded Sheep Muse Science video. Or if you say Aha, you see the sort of cartoon or the drawing and the pages flipping. It's like the first image I have of any of those one-hit wonders is the music video.
Yeah, and here's another point that let's say that, the radio station you listen to has overplayed such and such song. You're like, oh, I'm tired of this one. I'm listening to KLOS, I'm going to put it on KMET or whatever, right? You didn't have that option really with MTV, right? You're like, well, I'm either going to turn the TV off or put something non-musical on, or, well, I'm kind of sick of this song, but it's Michael Jackson's Thriller that's been played at the top of the hour every hour for weeks now, but I don't know, the storyline and the cinematography and stuff's kind of interesting. So yeah, I'm going to keep watching it. Right. So you couldn't just turn the dial either.
I've never really considered that. That's an excellent point. You're absolutely right. And it became, because of that, it became a common language that we all shared, right? We all knew that stuff. As soon as I rattled off those bands, as soon as you said Jeopardy, it's like we immediately know what that is. It's almost beyond. Well, it is. It's more than the song. It's like when we think Duran Duran, we think of beautiful men in beautiful places because of all of those music videos. Like I love Duran Duran, and we probably think of that before we think of the music.
Oh yeah, a catamaran with people wearing pastel suits, because that's what you wear on a catamaran.
Yeah, of course. No socks, loafers.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was part of the culture, right? So it was above everything. Cool. Well, let's start it off. I don't know. I forgot how we decided. Did we Rochambeau last time? I can't remember.
No, I'll tell you exactly how we did it. Both Rodney and I, Rod, because you picked decades too, right? You broke yours up by decade.
Yeah, totally unintentionally.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I was not planning on that, but as I was going through the lists, that just presented a little more variety for me, and I was like, well, Mike did that on I forget which list. I think it was like most underappreciated bands or something like that. And I was like, well, I thought that was kind of a cool idea that Mike had. I didn't set out to do this, but it kind of happened that way. With one exception, I didn't. There is one repeat decade. I didn't like break it down to strictly having to have it different ones. But that is how I wound up kind of doing it.
Okay.
And because of that, because both Rod and I have based ours chronologically, Rod, if your list hasn't changed, Rod had the oldest selection of the 15 songs we're going to talk about, which, is from the 1950s. So I think that's the place to start, right?
I did. We thought we had kind of discussed that, and we were discussing if we were going to take it all the way back to the 60s. And I said, I think I got one up on you. I took it all the way back to the 50s.
I love it.
So let's start it off. Talk about a one-hit wonder, and we'll get into the idea of standing the test of time, because boy, has this song stood the test of time. Well, we're going to take it all the way back to 1958 and a song by the Champs called Tequila. Man,
Tequila.
First of all, it was an absolute smash hit at its time, but I also couldn't tell you one other song by the Champs. I love the fact that it was a B-side. I love it when the like unintentional little throw-in song to be the stepbrother on side 2 winds up becoming the big hit. I don't know. That's always been like mildly endearing to me. But and another little additive to that we kind of discussed in our previous shot at this episode was that the idea that a song can be a total one-hit wonder, but through the course of time, whether it is largely, most commonly being featured in a movie, for example, and other avenues as well, but can just sort of have this second and third and fourth life and whatever. Could be because the sporting world starts playing it at arenas, whatever it is. In this case, it might be all multiple ones of those. But I did mention how, I love how when I first met Glenn, actually, when we first became friends, I found it interesting that this, long-haired speed metal kid was such a big fan of Pee Wee Herman. I thought that was really cool. It just that was one of my opening, ideas of getting to know how diverse you were in terms of your interests and things. And that absolutely was part of it. I forget, I'd have to look up the movie year, like 87, I think it was. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Like that was all, an unbelievable bar scene with great Pee-wee. And like that completely shot that song back up into stardom. I'm sure there's other examples. That's the biggest one, but I'm sure there's other examples of this song having more and more lives. And unlike most of the songs on my list, this one, I bet you to this day, people between the ages of 5 and 95 know this song, which has always been kind of cool to me. So I had to go with Tequila. There's a couple, I promise I won't do this on all 5 of my selections, but having the time to go back and do a little deeper research, now that we're making our second attempt, made it more fun. Maybe none more than this track. I was like, I don't really know much about the Champs at all. Found out that they were, in fact, named in honor of country legend Gene Autry's horse, Champion. Beknownst to many people as a great legendary country artist, but also as the benevolent owner of the California Angels baseball club. But so never knew they got their name from that. They also had, even though they were sort of were a one-hit wonder, as they continued on to the 60s, had a whole, a ton of rotating musicians that played in the band. Glenn Campbell, for example, was in the Champs for a while. But more interesting to me, a little duo named Seals and Croft, who much later in the 70s would have their own one-hit wonder as sort of a soft rock yacht, what we now call yacht rock song, now called Summer Breeze, which if I was more into that song, I would have had fun putting them both on my list and carrying a lineage through. I couldn't go that far with Summer Breeze, but yeah, it was kind of fun to research the Champs a little bit more too, but I got to go with Tequila for my first selection.
Strangely, not Latino at all. A bunch of white dudes. The quintessential one-hit wonder, right? So for 2 immediately obvious reasons. One is the gap between their number 1 song, Tequila, on Spotify, which has 91,500,000 listens, and song 2, which is a song called El Rancho Rock, which has 641,000. That gap.
Wow.
That gap tells you.
That's a gap.
Kind of what
I would be shocked if any of your guys' gaps compare to that.
There might be a couple. We'll see. But the other one is, Rodney, what you said, I think is right. Everybody, if you played Tequila for 10 people, those 10 people would all know the song, and 9 of them would not know that it's the Champs.
Right. For sure.
Yeah, that's a very good point as well. And all get happy when they heard it. Not like sentimental, like, oh, I remember Summer Breeze and that summer of 74. Like, people get excited when they hear Tequila. So
it's such a jam.
It's a party song.
It is.
Anyway, all right. Great first pick. That is okay. We can drop the mic and go boom, we're done. Now, Mike, go ahead. I know you guys did yours in by decades, so, and I did not. So it makes sense for you to go next.
I'm gonna go about 10 years after the Champs released Tequila to 1969 when Norman Greenbaum, how many people know that name, released the single Spirit in the Sky, which actually has you beat right off the bat, Rodney. Spirit in the Sky has 513 million streams on Spotify.
Wow.
His next closest song is a song called Tars of India, which has 486,000. So
it might have almost 9 million in the gap.
No, 513 million.
Oh, Tequila has really?
No, Tequila has 91 million listens. Spirit in the Sky has 513
Holy
million.
shit.
513 million listens to Norman Greenbaum.
And I'll tell you why.
Wow.
I'll tell you why, or my assumption, and we have talked about this before. My assumption is because that song is featured in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Spotify generation, I'm sure, knows that song probably better than they know Tequila.
Yeah, my son included.
I did not realize that.
I think these Spotify listens are a good barometer for the conversation. They're obviously not the be-all, end-all. Interesting conversation point. But back to Mr. Greenbaum. So he released the song from the album of the same name. The single went gold in the United States, selling 2 million copies from 1969 to 1970. It reached number 3 on the Billboard charts, where it sat for 15 weeks. And climbed to number 1 in the UK, Australia, and Canada as well in 1970. There's a whole history of Greenbaum that I'm not going to get into. The thing that I found most interesting about his story is you might be able to tell by Mr. Greenbaum's last name that he is a Jewish gentleman, but the song Spirit in the Sky is very overtly about Jesus. And when asked about how he came to write the song, his quote was, "I'm just some Jewish musician who really dug gospel music. I decided there was a larger Jesus gospel market out there than a Jehovah one, which is why the song is about Jesus," which I thought was pretty funny. And then he no longer owns the publishing for the song, but he still receives a minimum of $10,000 every month. Every time the song is licensed for a movie, a TV show, or an ad, because he gets performers royalties. So still cashing those Spirit in the Sky checks, which I think is pretty awesome. And then finally, he according to Greenbaum, he's received a number of letters from funeral directors over the years telling him that Spirit in the Sky has been their second most requested song to play at memorial services, right behind Danny Boy, which I thought was pretty interesting. So Spirit in the Sky, a song that I just absolutely
very good one.
love.
I have to, before we go to Glenn, I do have to throw in another. I brought up sort of the whole MTV generation, as well as my Seals and Crofts sort of lineage between one-hit wonders. In this case, let's not overlook the absolute one-hit wonder that this song became for an entirely different band in the early 80s, Doctor and the Medics.
Yeah.
And their MTV video hit with Spirit in the Sky. So, man, talk about having legs. This thing was a one-hit wonder for a minimum of 2 different artists.
Thank you for reminding me again. You mentioned that last time. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a pretty good indication that you've written a good song.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. All right, my turn. So we're going to come down numbers wise a lot here.
2023.
Yeah. This band has 1,000 listens, and their next song has 1 listen. No. So this is a band that I think all of us like. Mike, you left and you didn't watch them. And this was one of you should have stayed. This is The Church, and it's Under the Milky Way. Does not quite meet up to the I think the criteria of like a band that might have like a secondary maybe pseudo hit or whatever, but because I know they have like Reptile and stuff like that, which is another great song by them, but which is probably their second. I would think if you look that up, they would be probably their third. Okay. But Under the Milky Way, I was watching the video actually just earlier today. And man, they're just, they started in 80. This song came out on the album Starfish in 88. I think we talked about this before. I don't know how I got turned on to the church. It was probably our friend Kenny Cargill or somebody like that. I always liked for some reason had an affinity towards some Australian bands. I know obviously AC/DC's up big up there, but I always liked Midnight Oil. Rod, you were a big NXS fan. Speaking of NXS, like there's always something about Australian bands that they just have this kind of cool factor. Like Hutchins was like just a cool dude. Watching the video of this Under the Milky Way, they just seem like really cool, like just a cool, chill band. Just I don't know, just something awesome about it. They have that X factor. But yeah, I don't know what the numbers look like. I don't know if you have that up there, Mike, but I'm curious to see what that is and what the next one down from there is.
I do. And just to speak to and despite the fact that I had to leave early this last time, you and I, Glenn, did get to see them play Starfish front to back a couple of years ago, which was awesome. Yeah. I will say that it's funny that this is one of the bands that I would say whose sound I kind of chase when I try to write songs. Echo and the Bunny, bands like they just, and that's why you're right, they are a one-hit wonder, but their catalog is so good, it's hard to separate. Anyway, incredible songwriters. Under the Milky Way on Spotify has 91 million listens. Rod, do you want to guess what their second most listens is? What song it is?
Ooh, Metropolis?
The Unguarded Moment. 20 million listens, and then Reptile is third with 16 million.
Okay.
So not as big a gap, but definitely, Reptile has 3 times as many listens. More than
yeah. Great pick, Glenn. Really good pick. I definitely, that entered my mind by Mike and myself's criteria. I like their catalog too much to have ever put that in there, but I'm glad that you did, because for a lot of people that is their one hit, and great band and great song. At the end of the recent Echo and the Bunnymen show I went to in Denver, which we talked about here on the show, I had a conversation with the guy after the set, and at first he was like, man, they didn't play the Killing Moon. And Katie was like, what show were you at? They just played that a couple tracks ago. And then he goes, yeah, but they didn't play Under the Milky Way either. And I go, that's the church. And I got to go. I can't talk to you anymore.
Yeah, I'd be pissed if Echo and the Bunnymen didn't play Under the Milky Way too. That sucks. But they did play Tequila.
He was generally upset, I believe.
That's hilarious.
All right. Rodney.
All right. I am going to take it to 1963. I do truly love surf music and the golden age of instrumental surf music. And while there is plenty of bands and tracks from that era that I like more than this one, there is no argument, in my opinion, that the most identifiable song from that era would be the only one hit that I know by the Surfaris, the legendary Wipeout. A great song. Again, tell me to list my top 10. Maybe that's in there. There's a lot more that are ahead of it, but that's a quintessential instrumental surf jam from the 60s. If you asked, if you did Family Feud and surveyed 100 people, I bet you the overwhelming majority on that topic would identify with Wipeout. A great sort of very memorable drum solo, even though it's not spectacularly good or technically good, it's still, everyone knows that drum solo, right? Yeah. And it's that classic tone, that classic guitar tone, and I love there's a few songs I can think of from that era that are absolutely instrumental, but you get the the occasional wipeout, like just enough to like, keep you in the mood with like some little bit of vocal. But man, when going through that, that's an undeniable hit. It's a song that I enjoy every time I hear it. And I don't know another song from the Safaris, and I got to go with the classic Wipeout.
This might be, from a Spotify perspective, the one-hit wonder champ, even though it doesn't have the biggest gap. This is an interesting one. And first, kudos, Rodney. As I mentioned last time, Wipeout came this close to making my list. It was my number 6 song. Number 7 was Europe's The Final Countdown, but we only got 5 tracks, so didn't get to talk about Wipeout, but I'm glad you did. On Spotify, not only is Wipeout their number 1 most listened to song with 35 million listens, it's also their number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5th most popular song from various other records, compilations, and whatever.
Oh, wow.
So
35 wonder.
Listens, 7 million listens, 5 million listens, 6 million listens, 4 million listens, all Wipeout. Their 6th most popular song is a cover of Tequila, which has 2.6 million listens. And their 7th most popular song is a song called Surfer Joe, which was actually the A side of the Wipeout single, with a mere 377,000 listens. So Wipeout might be, again, not the biggest whole number, might be the most definitive case of a true one-hit wonder.
All right. Well done on the research, Mike, on the fly.
Thank you.
Good pick.
So back to me. The listens are going to get significantly smaller, but this is again a definitively a one-hit wonder. Mine is the 1973 single "My Cuckoo" from Alvin's Stardust, which has 5 million listens. Alvin's next closer song has 3 million listens, so it's actually his gap isn't that significant. But decidedly, this was literally his only hit. The song reached number 2 on the UK charts in December of 1973, and was kind of, and in the UK, for whatever reason, it was at the very top of the charts for 7 weeks, and it was the best charting single in the country throughout 1974. So a massive hit. Alvin Stardust is effectively a Bowie or T-Rex ripoff. Alvin Stardust, whose real name is actually Peter Shelley, not the Buzzcocks Peter Shelley. But he took on the pseudonym Alvin Stardust, as Bowie had with Ziggy Stardust, to just sort of capitalize on the current trend of the UK at the time. And it worked. He created this persona, made really this one record underneath that persona, with a few follow-ups afterwards, but the only thing that ever charted and was really successful was My Cuckoo. It is, I just absolutely love this song, and it's one of those songs, the Hot Chocolate, Everyone's a Winner, which is also a great song that could be in this conversation. Absolutely. It's one of those songs where I don't think a lot of people necessarily know it when you say it to somebody, but when you hear it, it's like, oh yeah, that song.
Can you sing a refrain?
I
don't mean to put you on the spot, but a lot of people out there probably want to know.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
Better. I'll do one better. Let's see if you can hear this at all. I'm gonna have to cut this out on YouTube.
Right. Okay, cool. So my next pick is from 1988. But now that I look at it, a lot of mine are in the 80s. So kind of falls true with growing up and the advent of videos and stuff. But this is from New York City band, a band that we got into. There was a period of time that we got into this kind of funky funk punk, like it was that whole mixture of like genres that a lot of these bands did, like 24/7 Spies and stuff. But the band is probably more rock oriented, but Living Color from New York City, Cult of Personality, which again came out in '88 on the album Vivid. And yeah, I just always really dug their vibe. The guitar playing was just amazing. The singing, Glover and Reed, the duo, and the other guys were just amazing musicians. I don't know where the numbers lie. I didn't look all that up, but I'm assuming it's probably a whole lot less than, again, the super hits, the super one-hit wonders. No, not so much.
Huge gap and a ton of listens. Cult of Personality, which we talked about in detail on our Vivid episode, 220. Cult of Personality has 151 million listens. Their next closest track is their re-record of Cult of Personality, which has 11 million listens.
Wow.
And then we get all the way down to Glamour Boys, which has 4.5 million listens.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a pretty big gap.
Pretty big gap.
Yeah, for sure.
151 million listens for Cult of Personality.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and by and large, if you look up any one-hit wonder list, I think they probably make that list of for their song. But yeah, I had to pick that just because I remember that time fondly where we were all. I think that was right before maybe you moved, Mike, up when we were all listening to that.
I'd say even
earlier than that.
Yeah, it was earlier than that.
Remember they played on the first Lollapalooza.
They did, and before that. We saw them play at the Scream Club in downtown LA with all the members of Fishbone in backstage watching them play.
Good memory.
Which was kind of a cool thing. I don't know if that was like their West Coast premiere but like taking it back there a little bit, and that was pretty fun to watch.
Wow.
They were a big deal. Like they were being hyped, and they were for the obvious reason. I mean, insanely talented, but being a black hard rock band was significant. It was a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. Muzz Skilling's on the bass. That was
Muzz Skillings and Will Calhoun on the drums.
Good job, rhythm section.
Came to me.
And also another example of MTV too. That video was pretty captivating. So a lot of the lyrics in that song, which are about MLK and JFK, and like that imagery that was all part of the video, like made it a lot more strong than just being a catchy song.
That song rips.
Yeah, that's a great song.
Total ripper. All right, let's move on.
All right, my next choice is a track that I think if you would have asked me at the beginning of my thought process of narrowing it down and looking at different stuff, I would have never guessed this would have made it. But the more I sort of looked at this song and listened to it and kind of researched it a little bit, man, I had to go with Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry from 1976. That was always just kind of I don't know, as a young person in that era, just kind of a top 40 hit. But man, it has stood the test of time, and that is a slam and funk song. I had always wondered if that was a white ensemble or a black ensemble putting that together. My honest answer would have been, I thought maybe like a multicultural band, a la Sly and the Family Stone. Turns out, not the case at all. 5 white dudes from Mingo Junction, Ohio, but getting their funk on to the nth degree. That's a super jam. That, interestingly, was going to be the B-side of a single until the record label was like, this is a case of a record label actually making a good decision. They were like, that's pretty damn good. Let's put that out at the A-side, as the A-side. But one endearing thing I learned, and there's not a lot of songs probably in the history of American music that can say this. Number 1 on the R&B charts, as well as the top 40 charts simultaneously. So, we don't have to go too far into the black and white thing, but that's saying that people from across the board dug this song. Like, it was undeniable, right? Just a total jam. I get, I enjoy it every time it comes on. One last side note, I can definitely remember sometime I don't know if it was 76 when it came out, probably not, but 77, 78. I can remember coming home from a camping trip in our RV, and that song was stuck in my head because there were some older teenage kids that had been jamming that on their cassette player. And so it was stuck in my head, and I can remember sitting there singing it, singing the chorus, and my dad, inexplicably, I guess, had never heard of the term funky, going, son, you can't sing that word. That's a really bad word. I mean, my brother just crack it up, going, Dad, you are square. That is not what you think it is. It's funky.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
He heard something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously had never heard that song. But that's a jam, man. So for my 70s choice, I had a lot of competition for that decade, but I had to go with Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry.
Oh. Well, I great fucking pick. A song that is on my One Hit Wonders playlist. But I have to just give a shout to Ohio Funk, because also the home of the OJs and the horribly underappreciated Slave. So Ohio had some great
and the eponymous Ohio Players.
And the Ohio Player, of course, the Ohio Players. Of course, yeah. The Ohio Players. And again, a perfect one-hit wonder. Play That Funky Music occupies the top 2 spots on Wild Cherry's most listened to Spotify tracks. Number 1 from the album Wild Cherry with 278 million listens. The single version from the Play That Funky Music single, 34 million listens. Their next closest song at number 3 is a song called I Feel Sanctified, 1.7 million. So they have over 300 million listens for that song, less than 2 million for their second closest.
A one-hit wonder.
That is a one-hit wonder.
That is a song, Rodney. I know you do DJ sets every once in a while, whether it's just for Katie or for your friends that come over. You need to start every DJ set with that song. That should be your...
I love that song, but that also falls into, there's a lot of great songs that fall into what I call the wedding set list, which I played a wedding once, and I think like 25 people came up to me and requested Brick House. And Brick House is a great song by the Commodores. It's a great song.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so annoying that like older people with no sense of like great taste in music, like that's their only go-to. Just to stick it to them, I played a different Commodore song, which is Too Hot to Trot, which is, it's a short song, but I happen to like it more. So Glenn, it's on my list. I love Play That Funky Music, but there's also a little bit like, it's got to be with the right crowd. You can't just give that out to any old person that's requesting that. Because
that song is fail safe, though, man. That song is fail safe.
It is fail safe.
Yeah.
The production on that thing, it's slamming, right? It's not just catchy. It's not just funky. Like it kind of slams too. Like it's got all of it.
It's a great song. For sure.
Yeah, totally.
So right. I am finally getting to the 80s, 1981 specifically. This song, you won't, Rod, your memory may have retained it, but if I were to tell you that this song came from the record As Far as Siam, could you tell me who the band is? That is because Red Rider was a one-hit wonder. That song being Lunatic Fringe, which I don't know what it is about this song. I just absolutely fucking love it. And when I was listening to it now a month ago, I listened to it. It's on a number of my playlists. I just really, really like that song. My wife heard it playing from my office, and she said, "Is that Pink Floyd?" And it never had occurred to me in the decades, literally, that I've been listening to that song, that it sounds like Pink Floyd, but it absolutely sounds like Pink Floyd, which maybe has something to do with why I like it so much. The song has 38 million listens. Their next closest song has 385,000, so clearly a one-hit wonder. The song reached number 11 on the Billboard Active Rock Radio chart, and is just a great song. It actually has a lot in common with the song I chose for the 90s. It's really each band's only identifiable track, but that song is legitimately great. This song was a little bit deeper, which I thought was interesting. Guitarist and songwriter Tom Cochrane said he wrote the song after becoming concerned about the resurgence of anti-Semitism in the 1970s, and was inspired by reading a book by a guy named Raoul Wallenberg, who rescued Jews from the Holocaust during World War II. The song does not present itself as having such heavy, deep meaning and significance. Gives it added weight, makes me like it all that much more. And sadly, it is very prescient to today's world. So if you want to kind of mourn kind of the state of the world, you could do worse than by listening to Lunatic Fringe by Red Rider. So that's my third pick.
Yeah, a true one-hit wonder. I was on mute and I had to listen to it because the last time we did this, you alluded to Pink Floyd, and I was like, oh, okay, I got to check this out. And then I remembered what it was.
Right.
So it's so good, actually.
It's so good.
Yeah,
I love it.
Every time I hear that song, I enjoy it. Super good, but it's got all the elements, which I guess also is why it sounds Pink Floyd-esque, right? So you've got the very, very simple but just catchy guitar part, right? You've got the reverby vocals and the keyboards, which when keyboards are played great, they can put that same bug in your ear. And so it's got all those elements that, like, all three of those things I just mentioned are catchy, and then together, I mean, that song rules. And in addition, we talked about the whole movie thing. This was certainly no like resurgence of the song because of a movie at all, but it was featured in kind of I don't know if I'd call it a cult classic, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Vision Quest, right? Which was a song about essentially like high school wrestling. But one of those 80s kind of cult classic movies. And that was not only in that movie, but clearly the featured track at like the crux of the film, Yeah. So all those things.
Yeah, man. Well said. And so many of the keyboards in the 80s date the songs to the 80s because they're so specifically 80s sort of keyboards. Lunatic Fringe doesn't really suffer from that. It does. I don't know that it sounds like a contemporary song necessarily, but it doesn't sound dated to a time frame to me, which I love about it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, I know you're out there.
Exactly.
Okie doke. Down to my number 3, I guess. This would be 3. This was not a change. I had made one change. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but that's coming up. But this one, and I actually went out and I always thought this was an interesting endeavor by a band that was a self-proclaimed like anarchist group, and I'm talking about the band Chumbawamba, which had their uber hit Tub Thumping that was released in 97, and they were interesting to me just because I was like, well, how do you reconcile your political views and then sign to a major label and do all this thing? Well, I had to actually reconcile that with myself. Yesterday I rented their documentary I Get Knocked Down, and it was an interesting watch with one of the lead singers about just how it was funny. It was like his conscience was that face of that kid or something that was on the album cover. I don't know. It was like it almost looked like a skeleton face, but it had a big smile on it or whatever. And so that there was like somebody wearing that mask, and that was his conscience saying, hey, you're a total sellout. Why did you sign to EMI? Blah, blah, blah. How do you live with yourself? And he's just going through the motions of like, uh, you know, discussing it with other bandmates, discussing it with the label, with other people who were around them at the time. I thought it was kind of interesting. Um, and it actually kind of made sense at the end of it, where they actually, and I didn't know this at the time, but they actually did certain things. They used their platform at the time to, one of the, I guess probably the most famous one was they were at some like the Brit Awards or something, and one of the guys like jumped up and grabbed a bucket of water and threw it on some political guy and was just like, this is for not taking care of the working class and this and that. And it became a big thing, and the guy got arrested and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, they interviewed a guy from the Crass, and he basically, he said, for that alone, for using your platform for that alone, absolves any doubt of you selling out or, compromising your ideals or whatever to get to this level. And not only that, you made it there kind of on accident. Like, popular culture found you, you didn't find popular culture, kind of thing. So I thought the whole thing was really interesting. Again, I don't know what the numbers are on that. Maybe Mike, you can share. I think it went from like a jillion to like next to nothing. I don't even know any other songs that they really put out, but
Nobody apparently does. 220 million listens for Tub Thumping and 2 million listens for their next closest song.
wow.
And then
Okay.
nothing else, nothing beyond those two songs even has a million.
Okay.
But I just got to check you. And look, we all make verbal
Oh,
slip ups when we talk for hours and hours on these podcasts, so nothing
yeah.
too serious. But did you refer to them as the Crass?
I didn't think I did. I
I'm
thought I
pretty
said
sure you
Crass. Okay.
The tape. I just thought it was kind of humorous. I'm gonna start calling
Okay.
them the
Yeah.
Crass.
No, I know it's not the Crass.
I know you do. That's why I felt like calling you on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, undeniable one, big hit, man. I mean, massive song.
Yeah.
Massive song,
No.
catchy as hell, and uses the refrain that Mike mentioned earlier. Oh, Danny boy.
Oh,
Does it?
Danny boy.
Yeah.
I fucking
The
hate that
backup,
song.
the female backup singer, like,
Yeah.
gets a version of
I
Danny
don't
boy
remember that.
to
Okay.
that. So just had to, keep
As
that
they're
sort of
Bring it
line
back, man.
going
Bring it
through
back.
our,
Yeah,
our
it's all
different
connected.
suggestions.
It's all
as they're
connected.
pissing the night away, right? So that's another thing that the female singer sings. Anyway, okay, that was my number 3.
Rodney.
Rodney,
All
you're
right.
up.
This one was the most interesting and fun one that made my list. When we recorded the episode where, at the end we talk about what we're going to do next week, and Glenn suggested one hit wonders, and all three of us, Mike and I, were like, oh, that's great. What a great idea. We haven't done a list in a while. Fantastic. And so I sort of said to myself, immediately, especially when you suggest list things pop into your head right away. But I said to myself, like, oh, well, there's going to be a million things that pop into my head. So don't overdo it. Take your time. Wait till this weekend when you can look through your own record collection. You can go through other people's lists, and you can kind of have fun doing it. You don't need to overthink it right now. And I think we've been recording on a Wednesday night lately. And I didn't get to the weekend because by Thursday night, I fell asleep, and it never ceases to amaze me what role the subconscious can play in your life. And I had a extremely vivid dream, where I was, as they all go, no matter how vivid they go, there's always a little weirdness to them. I was at a shop in the Buena Park Mall of Orange County, where we grew up, and that was my mall I went to. Strangely, two of my good friends from Colorado were running the shop, so you get all those weird brain weaves that throw in. But this song was playing loud on the shop's sound system, clearly, and it sounded amazing. And then I proceeded to tell the people in my dream about how I was going to place this on our list and what I was going to say about it. Like, just like absolutely,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So
You're like
I think there's a
dreamt
yeah, like completely like just like did not think about that at all. That whole thing went down in my brain. Whether I, unbeknownst to me that was going to happen. And so this song, there's a pretty good chance this song would have made my top 5 anyways. I always think about it when I think about one hit wonders. It would be horribly bad karma to not put this in my top 5. So that was it. I mean, like literally the second I woke up, I just smiled and was like, yeah, that's like the most obvious choice ever. It comes from 1984. And it is by a band from Liverpool, England called Icicle Works. And it is a song called Birds Fly. Parenthetically added is Whisper to a Scream. A true 80s classic. One fun thing, I never knew if it sort of fit that criteria of was it actually a hit or not. It was a slightly bigger hit in England, but it did in fact crack the top 40 here in America. And if the overlord and godfather of top 40 radio, Casey Kasem, ever mentions the name of your song and or your band, then
you've got a hit.
I think we could all agree you do in fact have a hit, and sometimes a one-hit wonder on your hands. So I was happy to see that. I didn't know. I thought it was maybe a little bit more of a cult classic alternative hit, but it did make the top 40 in America. So I think that is absolutely a hit. But again, staying power. I have this record. This song gets on, and you know what? Every once in a while, I will play sort of the rest of that side or maybe the whole record, but most of the time, just play this one hit.
Just the one song.
So, but it's a true jam. It's got percussion. It's got fantastic vocals and lyrics. It's got everything you want from 1984. And it's a song I have not tired of.
I'd put this into the category of lunatic fringe for me, of just great songs. I will tell you, Rodney, that this was my single favorite pick of the first time we recorded the episode, because I had overlooked this song when compiling my playlist. It was not on my playlist, so I had to bump something to get Icicle Works on here because it is such a fucking great song. And definitely one hit wonder. 12 million Spotify listens. Their next closest song is Understanding Jane, which has 700,000. So a pretty good gap there. I did want to ask you, though, because this is absolutely the only song, unless there's one that I'm unaware of, the only song I have ever heard by Icicle Works. How is the record?
The record's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's not one of those where you're like, oh, this is the jam and the rest of it is unlistenable. That's not the case at all. But off the top of my head, I've owned this record for decades and I couldn't tell you the title of another song on it. So clearly I bought the used copy of this record for this song. This is the go-to song. It's fantastic. I love that you put it on. You bumped something else to put it on your top 100. It doesn't totally surprise me. This is the era when, you guys were listening to some like early Metallica or something while I was perhaps dancing around my bedroom with some only the front of my hair bleach blonde and listening to Icicle Works. So that would make perfect sense.
Well, let's just say we were both right. Although Icicle Works may have aged better, I'm not sure.
That song, that's a song that I don't see ever getting old.
Yeah.
Like I could hear that song 500 times and not get tired of it.
We're not talking about it tonight, and I don't know why it came to mind just now, but Bronski Beats, Small Town Boy comes to mind as a song like that. I mean, they had some other minor hits too, but that song it's one of those songs. It's like that, that kind of song. And I would argue that my next selection, although a 90s song, falls into the same category as those songs just mentioned: Lunatic Fringe, Whisper to a Scream, and whatever I just said. Small Town Boy. Not that it sounds like those, but to me, this song is representative sort of 90s one-hit wonders, the way those songs are related to the 80s, at least for me. And that would be Fastball's The Way from 1998, which there's something about this song that I just absolutely love. And I'm not sure I exactly know, other than it's just a really catchy song, but also lyrically tells this really great story about, I'll back up a little, then I'll get into the story. The song was released on January 7th, 1998. It was the lead single from the band's second studio album. That record is called All the Pain That Money Can Buy. The Way has 102 million listens on Spotify. A song called Out of My Head actually has 42 million, so not nearly as significant a gap as most of the songs we've talked about, but The Way was their only quote-unquote hit. But I thought the story of the song was really interesting. Written by the band's lead singer, whose name is Tony Scalazzo, and he was inspired to write the song after reading about the disappearance of an elderly couple from Salado, Texas. They left their home on June of 1997 to attend a Pioneer Day festival in Temple, Texas, and were found dead in their car at the bottom of a ravine near Hot Springs, Arkansas 2 weeks later. Apparently, they literally went the wrong way, and the gentleman had been suffering from dementia, and they drove off the road. So the song, when you know that and you go back and hear the lyrics of the song, is, they made up their minds and they kept on, and it's like, it's literally telling the story of this old couple and the family wondering what happened to them. And it just gives me chills thinking about it. It's just a great song. And one of those songs that, although not nearly as long as some of the 80s songs we've talked about, I've never gotten tired of.
Interesting. And that's also, like, I didn't know any of the background of that song. That song is very sort of, I don't know if I'd say upbeat, but it's kind of a happy song, right? Like, it's kind of jangly, and it's kind of, I never would have guessed that it was based on a.
It's dark, it's dark, but it's got that kind of just chill, like, kind of feel to it.
The way the lyrics are presented is sort of this couple made up their mind to sort of, the main refrain is, but where were they going without ever knowing the way? Right. So this idea that they had just decided to go on their journey, and it's presented more sort of about the journey than it is about the end result.
Interesting, because that is, I'm pretty sure that is Mormon based. That's what Pioneer Days is celebrating the Mormons, throwing off the shackles of prejudice and worse things from one stop to another, coming from the east to New York to Illinois, eventually to Utah. But that's the annual holiday for Mormons, is Pioneer Days. But so the way, right, celebrating the way, like coming to sort of religious freedom in the West, and
that's interesting. Yeah,
their track is kind of the opposite.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, just like we were talking about with Lunatic Fringe, that added depth to the lyrics. So they didn't write it to just be this pop hit. Like, they wrote a song that they put a lot of thought and care and specificity into, which I just so appreciate, and wrote a great hook, and it has a great guitar part, and it's just a great song.
Yeah, good pick. That's a great one. I love that song, actually.
Yeah,
super catchy.
So catchy.
Well, it has a whole nother dimension to it now.
And when you listen to it, and I'll shut up about it after this, the very beginning of the song, you might not remember this off the top of your head, but the very beginning of the song is kind of played at really lo-fi kind of mono, like it sounds like it's coming out of like an AM car radio.
Yes, yeah.
Which
and
makes
it kind of kicks in.
Yeah, and then it kicks in, when the bass comes in. So it's
that's a cool effect.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that's so good. Yeah. All right, talking about earworms and catchiness. So this is my one of my new picks. And I've loved this song probably since the day I heard it. So catchy. I love just the pop sensibility, the lyrics. I don't know if this song could be written today. I think just like whatever. I'm not one of those like anti-cancel culture kind of dudes, but I think there's a place for some true canceling, but for some bad people who have done bad things throughout the years. But this one, I don't know. This is an interesting pick. This came out in 1980. This might have been kind of in the realm of when well, I don't know if this was an MTV. I'll have to look that up. But my song for number two, I'll leave my controversial one for number one, is Turning Japanese by the Vapors. Love this song. Love the lyrics are great. The one line, what is it? I want a doctor to take your picture so I could look at you from inside as well. I love that line is a great line.
Good lyric.
So
good
good.
rendition, too.
I don't know, there's something about him that kind of reminded me of the Cars. I always loved the Cars too. I thought the Cars were a great band. This came out on their album Nuclear Days. Again, I don't know if
Great
this,
title.
yeah, I don't know if this kind of lyric could be written today. Just again, I think you'd probably agree that maybe some people might have taken offense to kind of I don't know. To me, it's just a love song. Like, I love it. It's just
You know what it's about, right?
No, I don't know. A love song.
No, it's about jacking off. It's about what you look like when you jack. Like, literally, that's what it's about. That he turns Japanese when he's beating off.
Well, I read that, but then they said that it wasn't about that.
Of course, they said it wasn't.
So I don't know if that was true or not. But but the guy who wrote it said he was thanking people that that they thought that they thought creatively that that's what it meant. I don't know.
I don't know. The first lyric is "I've got your picture." Like,
yeah, right.
I don't know,
Yeah.
man.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the only thing. First of all, great pick. This was on my very original list when you first brought it up. Fucking great song.
Oh yeah.
I think the thing that would potentially make it offensive today is not just the title, but because the guitar refrain. That's probably what might throw it over the edge. I don't know, but fucking
right.
Jam, dude.
It's a great choice. Yeah, but fuck, what about the great song Hong Kong Garden by Susie and the Banshees that does the same thing musically? It's like, God, in today's cancel culture, like the Bengals could get crucified for writing Walk Like an Egyptian.
But not if they were Egyptian.
Right. As long as you're, yeah.
Or if you know some Egyptians, you could. That's okay too. Like,
some of my best friends are Egyptians.
Yeah, right.
I'll give you the stats because this is another. First of all, I wanted to make sure you got the pun on Nuclear Days, which I just think is awesome. Nuclear Days.
Nuclear Days.
Just want to make sure you got. Turning Japanese, 42 million listens. The next song, News at 10, 356,000. So
there you go.
A definite one-hit wonder. And yeah, what a great fucking song, dude. Great song.
So catchy.
Oh, I
so
can absolutely remember being in grade school and grooving to that with some friends. Like, that's thinking like, this is alternative music.
Or white friends.
Well, one not entirely white, but and as a side reference to that, a great inclusion over time of that song was the kind of rare Jawbreaker song sort of cover trilogy where they played With or Without You by U2 that went straight into I'm Turning Japanese, straight into Skulls by Misfits. So
oh wow.
Yeah, that's a super fun one to listen to, of just like three guys having fun with three great songs and not trying to make any kind of statement, just like, hey, check out these three great songs.
Is that released, or is that just something they do live?
No, that's released.
Oh yeah, I
I got
gotta
the
check
the
that
old
out.
original 7-inch, but there's a
It's
compilation of their rarities and stuff that has
Was that-
Etc.
etc. That's on etc.
oh,
Okay,
Yeah.
well I used to have that, but I don't
Was
remember that
that-
at all.
Yeah.
that With or Without You Two, was that was the Jawbreaker?
It was called the split jaw
The
7-inch because it
I
was
remember when
half,
that came out.
Okay.
half jawbox, half
Yeah.
jawbreaker. Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
didn't.
And-
I didn't
and-
remember that cover.
Yeah, I
I
got it
think
there
on that
somewhere.
one, Jawbox does a fantastic Buzzcocks cover, Teenage Airwaves.
Yes, that I've
No,
that
Airwaves Dream. Airwaves Dream.
Airwaves
sorry.
Dreams. Yeah, I have that on a playlist somewhere. But yeah, I'd
Yeah.
forgotten about the Jawbreaker thing. I got to go listen to that.
Yeah,
Glenn, would it offend you at all if I wrote a song called "Turning Filipino"? Is that? I don't know what the music would sound like.
I don't know. You guys have called me Flip for as long as I've known
Oh,
you.
you're
so
outing us now. You're
any
outing.
anybody who deals with that kind of abuse their entire life,
Please don't go to HR.
yeah. Let me make a call. Now,
All right,
I would be honored. I would be honored. I might come at you with an axe though later. But yeah, okay, we're down to number ones. Oh, you know what I forgot to mention is that the Vapors were discovered, and you probably know this already, but they were discovered by the bassist of the Jam. Did you
Didn't
know
remember
that?
Bruce
that.
Foxton, really?
I
Yeah.
didn't remember that.
Interesting. I did not
So-
know that.
Oh,
Little
that's rad.
I wrote that. I forgot. I wrote it down here and I forgot to mention it, but
Oh, that's cool.
there you go. Okay.
All right.
Next up.
So for my last one, this is the only one that I changed from my 5.
Oh,
And I think largely in part that Mike brought up a really good point during our first recording of this. Like, is it actually a hit? Is it just a hit to you, or did it qualify as a legitimate hit? Did it sell a certain number of copies? Whatever. Not that we had any stringent requirements for our picks. We never do. But it kind of got me to thinking. I will. Mike dropped a couple runner-ups earlier, so I will say that it was the great classic by a short-lived outfit called Time Zone, which was a good amalgamation of early hip-hop legend Africa Bambaataa with John Lydon, aka Johnny Rotten. A great song. But before I go into that further, that was a hit to me. But I sort of reconsidered, and I came up with a song that, unbeknownst to me, was a way bigger hit than I ever even realized. I am going to go with actually the same year as Icicle Works, 1984, with the also unbeknownst to me, the band and singer Nena from Germany. A lot of people historically that weren't like super knowledgeable thought that Blondie's singer was Blondie. We all know that was actually Deborah Harry, and the name of the band was Blondie, right? Apparently the name of the band was Nena, and the singer is Nena. They were cool with doing both. But the song, of course, in English as it came out in 1984 was 99 Red Balloons. It came out the year before in Germany and Europe as 99 Luftballons. Here, the part that I did not know is that its success in America, where it went to number 1, was actually the German version. And where it went to number 1 in 6 or 7 different countries around the world, maybe more than that, maybe closer to 10. And I'm guessing that by the time the English version came out, it was sort of played out, right? People had already heard it a year before and rightfully so enjoyed it. I would have guessed completely the opposite, that in America that the English version would have been the bigger hit. But I never would have guessed that it went to number 1 in America. It's sung in German. A couple other points to that. The reason I decided, there were plenty of other songs I could have substituted in for that number 5, my 5th choice. But the fact that it has an anti-war message, I always thought was pretty cool. Interestingly, it became sort of a thing of an anti-nuclear proliferation song, but that actually wasn't until it was written in English, and the English lyrics were written by someone that wasn't in the band. Like, after it became such a big hit, someone wrote English lyrics to it, which is not a direct translation. And the band actually was a little bit like not down with it. They were like, we're not that song, yeah, it's anti-military, but it's about a story that we wrote. We're not a protest band. That's not what we were setting out to do. So it's kind of misrepresenting us. But like it or not, it sort of became a thing around the world for anti-nuclear proliferation. So kind of a cool secondary life on its own. And of course, I would be remiss to not mention that for decades and decades, one of our favorite bands when we were growing up, 7 Seconds, that became a staple of their set. I actually read, like, not that long ago at all, a pretty cool interview with Kevin Seconds where he said, to this day, we still close our show with that song, and I love it every time we play it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk about staying power. Like, and another little side note of staying power. In 2006, during a Hurricane Katrina relief fund, there was some sort of cable television music video show that was putting stuff on that said, if you donate enough money to help people from Katrina, you can pick a song or a video to program during this benefit. Someone was benevolent enough to give $35,000, so they got an hour of airtime, and they requested that for the entire hour it would be only the German and English videos of Nena and 99 Left Balloons and 99 Red Balloons played for the entire hour. So talk about staying power, man. It is truly a one-hit wonder, because I can't tell you another song by Nena. But a rad song and a song that sort of gained a bigger life of its own than when they originally wrote it, which I think is kind of cool. It's a one-hit wonder, but that became something a little bit bigger. And so I threw that in there.
Not only a great song and a great pick, but a really unique song.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really sound like anything else.
Right. Like you immediately know what that is every time you hear it.
454 million listens on Spotify. Their next closest song has 51 million. So more than 400 million more listens for 99 Luftballons, which is wild. Their number 2 is 99 Red Balloons, which is interesting. Which has 80 million. I skipped it, but so clearly they're a big hit. The other thing, if you go to whatsong.com, which will show you what movies and TV shows a song has been used in, the list for 99 Luftballons is it's been in bazillions of TV. Like the royalties for that song must be pretty sweet, because it's been used a lot.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Can you guys think of any other songs that might have made the top number 1 that were not in English? That's interesting.
Yeah.
The Beatles had a French version of Michelle that was a massive hit in the 60s.
That got to number 1? Probably.
I don't know.
Yeah, I just thought that's an interesting one. I can't even think of.
Yeah, not that big. I mean, I can from that era. A couple others also sung in German. Falco doing Der Kommissar.
Der Kommissar.
Both German and English.
Good one.
Yeah.
I have a 7-inch of, this is a little more obscure because it wasn't as big of a hit, but Peter Schilling, almost an ode to David Bowie. Man.
It's a great song.
That song is really good. I accidentally bought the 7-inch in German, and I rebought it in English off of eBay. So, next time we hang out, I can play both versions.
There you go.
Here's a few for you. 1986, Rock Me Amadeus by Falco. 1987, La Bamba by Los Lobos.
Yeah.
1996, The Macarena by Los Del Rio. 2017, Despacito by Luis Fonsi featuring Justin Bieber. 2020, Life Goes On by BTS. So there's been a few, but not a lot.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for bringing that up. I don't think their Commissar was by Falco. I think you brought up the true Falco hit.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Which, by the way, it was strange. In the mid 90s, I was in Austria, at like some big dance party blowout where they had like a punk rock room, this, that, whatever. People from Austria, that song, what, by this point, this is 1995, it's at least a decade old. People were getting down to Falco in their home country like they had never heard the song before. It was unbelievable. Awesome. So that's another, one that could have made it.
That music's pretty good, actually. I like Falco quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right.
After the Fire, that's who did Dirk Star.
Anyways. Yes, you're right. I couldn't come to it, but you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna bring us into the 2000s with my last pick. I'm gonna bring us to 2008 for a song. My list didn't change from the first time we recorded. I'm not sure you guys were as familiar with this song or not, but it's a song I absolutely love. It is the song is Sweet Disposition. The band is Australia's The Temper Trap, which released the song as a single from their, what I believe was their first album. They're kind of an Australian indie rock band, and it was kind of not really a hit when it was first released, but renewed interest in the song was generated when it was included on the soundtrack for the 2009 movie 500 Days of Summer, which I absolutely love. I watched it just a couple of weeks ago for the 10th time or whatever. It still holds up. Go check out that movie. And the song, as a result of being included in the soundtrack and becoming so popular, ultimately reached number 9 on the Billboard Alternative charts in 2009. Sweet Disposition has 612 million listens on Spotify, followed by their next closest song, Love Lost, which has 76 million. So a pretty significant gap there. And just a really great song. It's sort of got this electronic, the synth that plays throughout, but it sort of serves as the intro to the song that as soon as you hear it, you immediately recognize it. And I love it. And it's sung with this really like pretty, just male vocal melody that I just think is really, really good. And it's just kind of a soothing song to me for some reason. And when I went through the list, because I wanted to include a song from the 2000s, I was kind of going through and a lot of hip hop that I like and whatever. But as soon as I saw the Temper Trap, I'm like, oh shit, that's the one. It's got to be Sweet Disposition. So if you don't know that song, you probably do, but don't realize it. But check it out. It's a really, really great song. To me, it sort of equates, Rodney, to the Icicle Works song, whereas the song is so good you have to believe that the band has written other really good songs, but I haven't bothered to go beyond the one song because the one song's good enough.
Total. Well, or even when you do like with Icicle Works, like the whole like kind of tribal drumming and like really cool percussion, then you listen to the rest and you're like, what happened?
Where the high is so high.
Yes.
Yeah. The classic one-hit wonder dilemma, right?
Yeah.
We've written this one great fucking song and we're never going to be able to duplicate it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I know my kid knows that song. And number 2, I think it might be, they're Australian, you said?
They are.
It might be, that lead singer might be a Filipino Australian singer looking dude. He looks Filipino to me.
Really?
Just, yeah.
Representing.
Yeah, well, I might be totally wrong, but
we should probably clarify that before.
He's got that flat nose like me. So.
Wow. Okay.
Hairless legs.
Hairless wonder. And the Filipinos can sing, but I might be totally wrong. Anyway,
isn't a Filipino singing for Journey these days?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. People say he's better than Steve Perry.
If you're
Filipino
pride, baby.
Let's move along.
All right.
Oh, wait, check this out.
I'm probably totally wrong.
No, check this out. So all I Googled was the Temper Trap. And in the people also ask box, the very first question is the lead singer from Temper Trap Filipino?
Oh, really? And the answer is?
Let's see. The Temper Trap.
It's probably like Laotian or something.
Malaysian for sure.
From the
He's got the look.
Indonesia. He's from Indonesia.
Oh, okay, close enough.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he moved to Australia as a young boy. So yeah.
Nice. All right.
There you go. Mystery solved.
All right. Okay, my last one, my controversial one and I did a scientific
This one's not controversial unless you changed it.
It's not? Okay.
Oh.
I actually asked my wife, even just yesterday, I said, do you know what this song is? Can you name this song? She said, yeah, it's, well, she didn't actually give me the name. She said, it's the one where he asked for a Pepsi. All he wanted was a Pepsi. And I said, yeah, that's it. And then I said, well, who sings that? And she says, Suicide. I was like, okay, you get an A. You get an A on the exam. But can you name any other songs by Suicide? Absolutely not. So, scientific experiment of one passed. I say yes. So institutionalized.
I thought she would have had I Saw Your Mommy for sure.
Dude, I asked her. I pressed her. I said, hey. She said no. So anyway, this song was played on K-Rock. I would venture to say that any general listener of K-Rock could say that who this song probably was if you were growing up in the 80s, but probably not very familiar with Suicidal is my guess. I don't know. I could be totally wrong, but I wanted to include them because I wanted to represent some punk in here too. So yeah, that's my pick. Good video, interesting video, great lyrics, great song. Yeah, what can I say about Institutionalized? It's a great album.
It's a fucking great album. That's probably the weakest song on the record, in my opinion. But it's still a great song. Yeah. It does have probably our smallest gap of any song we've talked about. Institutionalized is their most popular song with 47 million listens. But second is a song called Psychovision that was probably in some Tony Hawk skate video.
Oh yeah.
That has 26 million listens. So the gap's not as wide as some of the other ones we've seen. But I think this is a good example of one of those songs that I do think, and again, Spotify skews this a bit, but I do think is very when you grew up specific. Like, I don't think if I said all I wanted was a Pepsi to my 25-year-old son, that would mean anything to him.
Yeah, no, totally.
But most people in our age group would,
for sure.
In a transcending way. People that never listened to any punk rock or hardcore at all quite possibly would know exactly what that reference was. So
yeah,
one hit wonder in sort of a different way. Maybe didn't crack the top 40, but
I think it
definitely
totally
one hit wonder of a certain time and place. Yeah.
All right, we did it. We got through it all.
We did it.
Good job. Thanks, guys. That was fun. I know we were thinking about maybe doing a part 2 at some point. We talked about that last time, I think. That would be fun down the road. Yeah, appreciate the endeavor and the great songs. There's a lot of great songs that everybody picks. So it's pretty varied, like from, decades to, some stuff that I had. So anyway.
Yeah. For sure we should do a part 2 at some point, but I think more specifically, and Rodney, I think you referenced this sort of at the top. We should get back to doing more list episodes. The list episodes are just super fun to do. They take a little bit longer. They clock in, sometimes get close to 2 hours as this one will. But they're great. We should do them more often for sure.
And I would like to think, I hope that they're more participatory for our listeners, right? That everyone makes their own list. We do occasionally get awesome listeners that do send in their lists as well. And I hope everybody, that even the people that don't communicate with us are at home, either they're going giving us like a, oh, yeah, or a, oh, that's
Idiot.
terrible.
Yeah.
And making their own and compiling their own lists,
I'll give a shout out to Scott in Kansas City, because when I told him we were doing this, he sent his list, and Rodney, Whisper to a Scream was on his list. without him knowing that we picked it. So that's
you shared that with me. I wasn't gonna spill the beans on that before we did the actual episode, but yeah, cheers to you, Scott, for that. Great minds think alike.
Yeah, good shit. All right, more lists for sure, but not next time. Next time we are finally getting back to our Cure trilogy. I had prompted us to talk about 17 Seconds and Faith and Pornography. We got 2 of those 3 down. The last time we talked about Faith way back in May, which was episode 223. But we are going to get to Pornography, so to speak, next week. But it's going to be a special episode because it will feature the return of our dear pal, Dave Lutz, who has some very personal and good stories about the record. So look forward to bringing him into the conversation. That will be really fun and just a great record. So listen to that one before we talk about it next week. In the meantime, check out huntsmanhill.com for past episodes. You can now find us on YouTube. Check us out. A few episodes there. The editing of that is a little laborious, so I'm a little slow getting them up. I'm still working on it. So please support there. Comments and suggestions, as Rodney suggested, to huntsmanhillpodcast@gmail.com. We are on Instagram and Twitter. Please check out our music. A brand new Mid-City 3 record just came out yesterday, the 16th. That record is called Regrets, Etc. Please check it out. I'm very proud and happy of that one. And of course, as always, please check out and listen to the HHPP Spotify playlist, where you will now hear 3 songs selected by us from our One Hit Wonders episode. So you don't get one hit wonder on this playlist. That's how strong this playlist is. You get 3. So I'm going to pick as my selection. I think I actually chose Lunatic Fringe the first time we did it. I'm not going to choose that this time. I'm going to choose Fastball's The Way as my selection for the HHPP Spotify playlist. Rodney, what of yours would you like to include?
I'd like to include all 5 versions of Wipeout. Actually, not at all. For me, it's an easy choice. A classic, and for anyone out there listening who hasn't paid it attention, Birds Fly by Icicle Works, a timeless classic and truly a one-hit wonder.
Good one, man.
Whisper to a Scream. I'm going to pick Turning Japanese for mine.
Excellent. Great pick. Yeah, I'm glad you added that one, man. A great song, and we didn't get to talk about it last time, so that's great.
For sure. Quick question, Mike. How much has our listenership dipped since people can now see our ugly mugs?
It's gotten pretty bad.
How can we rescue our attempt at going on YouTube?
Yeah.
We hire a PR firm to like throw a life preserver out, or what?
I would recommend witness protection. We should definitely try to avoid being out in public as much as possible for fear of. I'm going to leave it right there. I was going to get into some political waters that I don't want to get into right now.
Oh boy.
Good to see you, boys. If the general public doesn't appreciate it, our massive, enduring audience doesn't appreciate it, I enjoy seeing your ugly mugs. And it'll be fun to reconnect next week with our pal Dave.
Yeah, sounds good. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you.